So calves are a lacking body part for me, so why not spend the weekend building a machine that will help me build them up? Here, this is going to be working the tibialis anterior or the front part of your shin. But before I can actually get started, I got to make sure I spray myself with mosquito spray because it's summer, it's hot, and they start biting you. Once I get sprayed, time to take out all my wood and lay it on the table. I like to pre-measure all my pieces of wood so that way I don't have to constantly be re-grabbing the measuring tape. And after I measure them, I go ahead and square them off so that I ensure that I get a straight cut all the way through. Again, I do this with all my pieces. Once I'm done, I make sure I cut all the pieces that are required with the miter saw. This way I don't have to constantly be switching between measuring tape and saw, and make sure you file off all your pieces so you don't get any splinters. Now you can start assembling it, so make sure you always use your square to make sure you get some good 90-degree connect pieces. Here's what the first part will look like, and what's real important here is that the following piece is actually staggered. So you see the one long piece is underneath and then the other long piece is on top of the two shorter pieces. Again, make sure you square it off. This is the foot cradle. This is the part that your foot is going to be going inside of. Make sure you get those two staggered pieces. I cannot emphasize that enough. Afterwards, you're going to make sure that you drill some holes close to that lower piece. You see the part that's on the table? That's where you want the hole to be. So just put a 5/8 inch spade bit into your drill and drill across one side. Then you're going to be flipping it over and you're going to be drilling the same hole on the other side. Pay attention to where these holes are. Again, we're going to be coming back to it in a bit. Now we're actually going to be building the frame that this foot cradle is going to be going on. Now this took some trial and error because again, these are not connected at a 90-degree angle. So you're just going to have to mess around with it with the miter saw until you find that right angle that's comfortable for you. Make sure you build two of them and then use a good amount of screws to secure them together. Now we're going to connect those two pieces together using a longer piece of wood. Again, use your square for everything to make sure you get some good 90-degree angles. You don't want anything to be lopsided, and make sure you use enough screws to secure it in place because you don't want it to be all wobbly, especially if you're going to be putting your entire body weight on it. Afterwards, now it's time to connect the two pieces. So you see, this is what it should look like. Remember that hole that I was emphasizing earlier? Now we're going to get back up to it. You're going to be taking out a pillow block. You're going to be putting it towards the top end of the frame and make sure that you outline where the two holes are using a pen or marker, doesn't matter which one you use, on the top end of that frame. And this is where you're going to be drilling your holes. So now you're going to be switching out that 5/8 drill bit that we previously used. Now you're using a 1/4 inch and you're just going to be drilling across both holes for both sides of the frame. Afterwards, you're going to be grabbing a long bolt, putting a washer through it, putting that washer and bolt through the pillow block. Now you're going to put that entire piece through one of the holes. You can use a drill or a hammer to secure the bolt all the way in. Make sure the bolt is long enough to the point where there's a little bit hanging out from the bottom end of the piece, because remember, you have to secure it with another washer and then a bolt. Make sure you fully tighten this bolt, and you're going to be doing it for both holes, and then again the same process for the other side. Now, that piece that we were talking about earlier that has the hole in it, the foot cradle, is going to be coming back. You're going to be grabbing a massive thick ass bolt, putting a washer through it. Now that hole is going to be going with the bolt and the pillow block. So you're going to be lining up the hole in the pillow block with the hole in that foot cradle, putting that thick bolt through it all the way through, going through the pillow block, and you're going to be securing that in with a washer and a bolt. Now, real important here, do not tighten this all the way. If it's too tight, it's not going to be able to rotate. And we're going to repeat the process for the other side. Have a bolt, put a washer through it, put that through the hole in the foot cradle and the pillow block, and then secure it with another washer and another bolt. Go ahead and test it out. If it's not moving as smoothly as you want, that means you tighten it too much. Just loosen it up a bit. It should be able to rotate freely. Now we're going to add the flanges with the pins. This is where you're going to be attaching some weights to it. Just use some screws. Once that's good, add some weight to it. And you can do this exercise standing up using one foot as I'm doing here. Or if you want, you can do it with both feet. But if you do it with both feet, you're going to have to do it sitting down. Now, the problem I found here is I made it a little bit too tall, hence why I'm standing on top of the dumbbell rack, because that's the only thing that's tall enough to sit on. Easy fix, make it shorter, bust out the skill saw, and trim some inches off the bottom of the legs for all 4 legs. And as always, like we did in the beginning, after you're done drilling a piece or cutting it, make sure you sand it off so we don't get any splinters. Once that's done, make sure you clean off all the sawdust and give it a good paint job. While it was drying, I enjoyed a little steak break because I was hungry. Now, once it's dry, cut out a piece of foam, and this is going to be the cushion that protects your foot against the actual foot cradle. So make sure it's the same length as the actual length of wood that your foot's going to be going on. Secure it on top of those 2 pins that you drilled earlier. I use a simple staple gun, but you can use some screws as long as it has a big enough head so it actually doesn't bind all the way through the foam. First, I start off with putting a staple through the middle, and then you just use a whole bunch of staples every couple inches to secure the rest of it. Keep in mind, the more staples you use, the more secure it would be. Once you secure the top, go ahead and flip it over and fold that piece of foam down. Remember, this foam is what's going to be on top of your foot, so it's going to be comfortable. So make sure you use a thick enough foam. And again, use a whole bunch of use a whole bunch of staples every couple inches to make sure it doesn't actually rip off over time. And here's the final product.